Okay. Need to think more about their own security. Like if you're keeping maybe $100 on your Lightning wallet, your security might not be that important. But if you're starting to keep $1 million on your Lightning wallet, then that's something really you need to think carefully about. And I would say that even with Lightning, kind of like taking over the majority of your commercial transactions, I would still recommend using a cold wallet for your holdings. And if you're running a store, I would still recommend using a cold wallet for all the money that you don't need to necessarily keep in your hot wallet. And I would also keep an eye on channels with peers who are not routing peers. If you don't need to keep money with peers that you don't have to, it represents a kind of an open-ended security risk. So you have this money in channels that is inactive, it can't be used for anything. So this is something people are going to have to start thinking more of as we scale up, as we go into millions of dollars. Another thing that I think that we're seeing with the movement from Lightning, from being an experiment to more of a system that people can integrate into their daily lives, is that we're seeing that reality is unbalanced. So what that means is people who are sending over Lightning are not necessarily sending in a bidirectional way. And in a Lightning channel, if you want to use it infinitely, you need the capital to flow bidirectionally. So once you've depleted the capital in your channel going out, if you want to continue to spend, you need the capital to come back in that same channel. But that doesn't represent the reality of how people do spend. So there's certain types of people who are spenders. They load up their wallet with some money from the chain, and then they spend down that wallet, and then that's it. They can't spend any more, so they're going to have to create a new channel or maybe use Lightning Loop. And the same applies to the merchants and exchanges. People are paying to them, and they're not moving a lot of their expenses to the Lightning Network. So what's happening is that their channels are becoming depleted in the inbound direction. So people are paying through the channels, and then they're becoming saturated. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It still represents an aggregation over the naive case of just making a payment on the blockchain. So you can still fit in maybe 10, 100, 1,000 transactions, even if it's completely unidirectional. But it's not as ideal as it could be. And it's representing a cost to the people who are using this that they're having to go to chain more, that they're having to deal with those issues. And one thing that can help somewhat is to move the capital around between your channels. So if you have one channel that is depleted, and if you have one channel that is not depleted, maybe you could move on the Lightning Network the capital around so that you would have both channels being not depleted. But it does not solve fundamental problems of getting overall depleted, because you're just shuffling around your existing liquidity. So it will especially be less helpful once we have multipath payments where you can use multiple channels together. In that case, you'll have more flexibility to receive or send, but you won't be able to fundamentally change the flow of where the capital exists between you and your peers. So this is something that I thought about for a long time. When I was working on the Submarine swaps project originally, I thought, we're going to have all these problems. We're going to lose some of the benefits of the chain when we go to the Lightning Network, and it's going to be unfamiliar. And it's going to be, a migration process of figuring this out. So what a Submarine swap does is it allows you to go from the chain to Lightning, or from Lightning to the chain. And that's something that can help you with these balance problems. So if you are seeing your channels all fill up because you're a merchant and people that are sending you tons of money are being super successful, you need to get that money to push to the other side of your channels if you want to continue to receive. and but you don't want that money to just be lost. So the submarine swap allows you to use the same principle of that Lightning uses to get your money back on the chain. And on the chain, it's not subject to the same flow restrictions that are restrictive to circular rebalancing. So after I made submarine swaps, I joined Lightning Labs, and at Lightning Labs, we created this product called Lightning Loop. And Lightning Loop is a bit different than what I worked on originally. And the main difference is that it's oriented towards bridging funds out of Lightning, because that is the main issue for people, is that they want to, they're a merchant and they've received so much money that they need to get it back onto an exchange. They need to get it into their cold wallet. Or they're a merchant and they're seeing that their useful channels that are delivering all the sales to them are becoming depleted, and now customers are having more problems paying to them. So that's become the most used feature of Lightning Loop, is to push funds out of Lightning channels so that Lightning channels can continue to be used. And this is a non-custodial service. The whole concept is non-custodial, which I think is pretty important for people to build on it. And I can kind of like give a high-level overview of why it's trust minimized, like how it actually works. What is Loop actually doing? So I have a little diagram at the top here. So what happens when you do a loop and a loop out, where you are using your Lightning funds to pay to an on-chain address? What happens is that you initiate a swap by creating a secret, an unguessable secret. And that's what you do every time you make a Lightning invoice, is that you're making this secret. And then when you make that secret, you take the hash of that secret, the one-way hash of that secret. And in Loop, you give this hash to the server and you say, hey, Loop, here is this hash, and I'm going to lock a payment to you. So I'm going to send you a payment, Loop, and it's going to be locked to this. And on the chain, it's not subject to a normal Lightning payment. The receiver doesn't know the secret, and so the Loop server, as the receiver, does not know the secret. So the Loop server can't just take this money because it doesn't know the secret. That's a requirement for Lightning payments, is that the receiver knows the secret, and that's how they can unlock the received Lightning payment. The secret's also called the pre-image. So what the Loop server does is it once it has this hash, once it has this payment that's locked to it, is it says, okay, I've got this money locked to me, and I can see that if I knew the secret, I would be able to take the money, but I don't know the secret. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a on-chain payment back to you, or back to wherever you want, and it's going to actually have the same hash. And this time, if you want the money, you have to present a secret that is corresponding to that hash, and that will allow you to take the money back to yourself. But there's also a clause where maybe you don't reveal the secret. And in that case, then this smart contract is going to time out, and it's going to say, well, now I can take the money back to myself because you never revealed the secret. So in the normal case, the Loop server will continue with the loop to say, okay, here is this on-chain output that you could take. So here are some chain funds that you could take that correspond to the money that you sent to me off the chain. And then the user is going to say, okay, that looks good. I've got some money on the chain that correspond to the outgoing amount, and I will reveal the secret and take the money to my full control without the timeout. And once they do that, once they reveal that secret, that allows the Loop server to say, hey, I've got this incoming payment that's locked to this hash, but now I know the secret, so I can take that money. And so that allows for this trust minimized flow, where there's only these two outcomes. Either the user revealed the secret and they created the secret in the first place, or the whole process times out and the Loop server is able to take back the money. And then there's also a timeout on the other side, where the user can get back their money as well, because the loop server won't hold on to that forever. And this is also basically how Lightning itself works. This is the HTLC concept. That's how we can move funds across multiple hops, because all these hops are using the same concept of this hash time lock effect. And it allows Loop to work over the network. So you don't even have to be connected to Loop. You can connect over the network, and as long as the Loop gets its secret and hash from some peer, that's enough. And this really allows you to spend down your channels. That's what this loop out is doing. Is it allows you to spend down your channels so that you are able to get inbound liquidity, so that you're able to either push out funds that you don't want to be holding in your hot wallet, or you're able to now receive in the opposite direction for future received payments. And the main point here is that you've locked a payment to the Loop server, but you created the secret. You created the pre-image. We don't even know it, so it's impossible for us to take that money. It's like as if we didn't know the private keys. So if you saw an address on the blockchain and it's locked to an address, you can see the public part of it, the address part of it, but you don't know the private key, so you can't take the money. The same thing with the Loop server. That the money that you've sent to us in the first stage is basically, to us, it's as useful as looking on the blockchain and looking at an address. It's only after you take the money, meaning that you reveal the secret, that we're able to take that money. Okay, so what this represents is really a liquidity market. So the Lightning Network works differently than a regular peer-to-peer network that works on altruism, because it requires committing capital to different people in different amounts. So we can't make a peer-to-peer network where everybody has unlimited capital, because Bitcoin is a scarce resource, and there's a cost to holding capital into a hot wallet. And so there's this concept of inbound liquidity. And all inbound liquidity means is that somebody else on the network is holding their money in their hot wallet, and they are holding it in a channel with you. And right now in the Lightning Network, you can't just walk up to somebody and say, I want you to hold some capital in a channel that's assigned to me, because that wouldn't scale. You would have all sorts of people just go and demand capital be locked to them, and there wouldn't be enough capital. The Bitcoin would be too limited. So that's where the market comes in. And the market says, oh, well, let's have a way to recompense people for holding this capital. And we don't want to just have it be a one-time expense, because capital is moving around all the time. We don't want to just say, every time I want to get some capital, I have to go to the blockchain and I have to arrange somebody to create a new channel to me. We want a system that is more efficient than that, and that allows capital to move as much off-chain as possible. So what Loop does is it says, you can come to us if you want inbound liquidity, because we've got some inbound liquidity. We're working on that problem. And you can do this swap with us, where you will trade your off-chain funds, and we will give you on-chain funds. And so we're giving you inbound liquidity, and you're giving us a swap fee. So the Lightning Loop is a paid service. And you also are paying fees to the routing network. So the other people on the chain who are kind of making a similar deal with you, that they're saying, if you move funds in this direction, then you're going to have to pay this amount. And of course, you also have to pay, because Submarine swap is half on-chain and half off-chain. You're going to have to pay an on-chain kind of a fee as well to the miners to help move that capital around. So what are you buying in this market? You're buying this inbound liquidity, meaning you can receive payments, which is super important as a merchant. And you're buying another thing, which is that you're buying a lower risk of your hot wallet being compromised. So if you're a merchant who is just receiving money all day, so let's say you're selling coffees, there's no real reason that you need to keep the money in your Lightning channels unless you're making Lightning expenses, but I think we're at an early stage for that. It's like if you have a cash register and your cash register is just filling up all day. Well, at the end of the day, you're going to have to empty out the cash register because you're not making so many payments from the cash register. And having an infinite cash register, like if you're just piling up money on the floor, that's a security risk. So what you're also doing when you are buying inbound liquidity is that you're buying lower risk for yourself. And because we have a Lightning as a flow network, meaning that the capital is only being shuffled between peers, basically this is a peer-to-peer marketplace where you're talking to your peer and you're saying, what if I push the risk over to you? And what are you going to charge me for that? And then we can have a competitive marketplace where people can say, oh, well, I'll charge this amount for this risk. And I think as we see we'll have a specialization of concerns. So people who are really good at being merchants, they might not really care about being great at security, but there'll be some people who aren't really good at being merchants, but they're really good at running Lightning nodes. And so we will have a marketplace figure out who should be responsible for being the merchants and who should be responsible for carrying the routing, who should be responsible for carrying the risk. It sounds like, oh, fees, I hate fees, I don't want to pay any fees. But I would say that if you look at the current market and if you think about it conceptually, we're not talking about the most gigantic fees here. So if you look, I think a normal routing fee that would probably be on the high end would be 10 basis points, meaning 0.1%. So you could, if you operate a coffee shop that's doing, $500,000 in business a year, you're only paying maybe $500 at that 0.1% in liquidity fees. So it won't break the bank, and this is an open market process to anybody in the entire world. Okay, so there's even more benefits to Lightning Loop that I think we can expand on and that you can use right now. So I talked about a bridge, and in the bridge concept, what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring the benefits of one system to the other system. So I talked about bringing the concepts of the benefit of the blockchain that doesn't have these flow restrictions. Like you can just send anything to anybody, and as long as it's a sufficient amount, they don't need to have a route, they don't need to have channels set up. So that's a great thing about the blockchain that the Submarine swap allows you to do, is it allows you to access that benefit with your Lightning funds. But the reverse is also true. So the Lightning Network has these great properties that you can access using this bridge. So one benefit is that it has a better privacy profile. I'm not saying it's anonymous, but when you send an on-chain transaction, you are literally broadcasting to the entire world where the money is coming from and where the money is going to. And that's just a hard problem from the start to figure out, how do I get privacy out of that? But if you move it through the Lightning Network, we have we don't have a gossip system. We don't have a broadcast system to tell everybody where the money's coming from. So just from the start, it's easier to figure out how to make that more private. And it breaks that traditional link that people are looking at when they're trying to compromise your privacy on the chain. So the money comes from somewhere on the Lightning Network, and then it goes out on the chain, which helps you kind of obscure your UTXOs. So another thing that I think is really beneficial here is that we're still using on-chain transactions to do these loops, but we're getting aggregation benefits. So even if you operate a coffee shop that does a loop out to move all the funds back, even once per day, instead of doing 100 coffee sales as individual transactions on the blockchain, now you are getting similar benefits, but you are only doing maybe one transaction on the blockchain, and even maybe less than that, depending on the type of submarine swap that you do. And then I talked about before, which is that regular, normal blockchain funds, of course, everything is still in smart contracts, but the Lightning as it stands, Lightning smart contracts as it stands today are more difficult to keep cold, to keep super secure, and that's something that most funds don't really need to be hot. They don't need to be in live active channels connected to the network. So that's something that you can access with a submarine swap. Is you can access this cold wallet in both directions. So if you want a submarine swap to go from your Trezor, your cold wallet, or you can arrange with somebody else and say, I'm going to pay you this money on the chain from my cold wallet that I'm keeping super secure, and then you are going to go make that off-chain payment for me. And that's what we call a loop-in, is that we will be responsible for doing the lightning payments and having that lightning hot wallet risk, and you will be able to keep your money just as you've always had it in a secure operation. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about is kind of the future of Lightning Loop and the evolution of Lightning Loop as we've moved from alpha to beta. So we recently announced a big upgrade to Lightning Loop, and we've moved the service into a beta service. And the big feature that we've introduced is that we've added this batching concept. And people talk about batching, and it's a little bit hard for me to explain. I think people are very familiar with the idea that if you do batching, that you're getting this chain savings. But I don't know if people exactly understand what it means. What it means is that if you have a transaction and you can attach more outputs that are payments to more addresses that you care about to that transaction, then you don't have to attach a lot of extra data to it. So what you're doing is you're getting kind of like an economy of scale from making a transaction. And batching is, SegWit is something that any wallet can implement to get some improvements, but batching is something that normally only big wallets can implement to get on-chain savings, fee savings, because it requires that you actually care about sending more payments to more people. But that's something exciting that we can offer with Loop, is that we can allow you to join into a batch with other people. So other people who are making on-chain sends, you can share a transaction with them, and you can do it in a way that you don't have to trust a custodian. And that's a service that is live on Lightning Loop today. You can run that. There's a big upcoming feature in LND, which is that we're going to allow multipath payments. And when we allow multipath sends in LND, we're going to allow you to actually batch major changes in all of your channels. Like even if you have 100 channels, we're going to allow you to use all of those 100 channels to make a payment. And what that means for Lightning Loop is that you can loop out, instead of just doing one channel, instead of rebalancing one channel and that being one on-chain transaction or one output, it's going to be 100 channels, or as many channels as you would like, as there is routing capacity for, and that is still going to map into one on-chain transaction. So that can be more efficient than even splicing or lots of other possible formulations for how to do liquidity rebalancing for maintenance on the Lightning Network. And even into the farther future, there's this concept where we can create multi-party channels. And normally the problem with multi-party channels is that as you add more participants to the multi-party channel, you get the risk that one of them is going to disappear or not be active. And whenever you have a Lightning channel and one peer is not available to sign, then the channel is not usable. But what we can do with Loop is we can make these temporary multi-party channels, and that allows us to even get rid of a lot of the on-chain overhead that we have today with the way that submarine swaps work. We can get rid of HTLCs, and once we have Schnorr and Taproot, assuming that soft fork is deployed, then we can fold together the signatures of all the different parties in a swap, and we can say that only represents one signature, one public key, which adds additional privacy, and it also drastically improves the price of a swap. And I've done some other presentations on the math of this, but how it works out, even without multi-party payments, or multi-path payments, is that you can be 5 times more efficient with your chain usage in the ideal scenario of using these temporary multi-party channels. And how does that work out? So instead of spending $5 on a transaction, you can switch to using this, theoretical future super batch loop, and instead of spending $5, you would spend $1, which can make it very attractive to people who are trying to send a bunch of money on the chain. And even if you're not, and even if this is only applying to people who really need to do a bunch of chain sends, it's lowering the cost for everybody because we're using the on-chain resources more efficiently. So Lightning Loop is something that you can try out today. It's an API. You can build your own client completely. It's it's a trust minimized API, so that's something that you can build. You can integrate into your application, and we also have a reference client implementation. Ride the Lightning is working on an integration. If you're a Ride the Lightning user, there's a PR for a Joule if you're a Joule user, or you can just go to this website lightning.engineering/loop, and you can download and get involved in trying it out. And it also works on testnet if you want to try it out on testnet.